All right, hello and welcome to today's live democast. Thank you all for joining. My name is Chris Shields. I head up product marketing at Gurucul, and I will be moderating today's live session. I'm joined by Paul John, one of our principal consultants in the Meta region. He has over 20 years of experience in the cybersecurity industry in various roles, both technical and consulting. He has designed and deployed enterprise network security solutions like Next-Gen Firewall, NDR, as well as SIEM, EDR, and XDR. Before we jump in, a few housekeeping notes. I encourage everyone to ask questions. You can type them in the box labeled questions just under the webinar window. You can submit a question at any time, and we'll try to get to questions live at the end. Usually within 48 hours of this live session, you will get a thank you email with a link to the recording for future viewing and reference. And lastly, sometimes BrightTalk defaults to 480p. Don't ask me why. So if your resolution doesn't look so great, you can click on the settings gear button at the bottom right corner of the screen and increase your resolution. Having access to the highest risk cases with a comprehensive set of information and context is essential for accelerating investigations and responding swiftly to threats. In this democast, Paul will show you how the Gurucul REVEAL security analytics platform empowers you to effectively manage your caseload, as well as expedite investigations by prioritizing those cases based on risk and then wrapped in 360-degree context. All right, with that, Paul, take it away.
Thank you, Chris. Let me share my screen here. I hope the screen is visible for everyone.
Yep, looks good.
Great. So as Chris mentioned in his intro, at Gurucul, our focus is to look at accelerating the investigation of threats by providing risk-based prioritization and context to the alerts. So having said that, on our threat detection, investigation, and response dashboard, we do provide a lot of meaningful information here. You can see the latest alerts, the open cases, risky identities and assets, and the users and entities which you are monitoring. But we also bubble up all these risky identities, assets, and IPs on our screen. But that's not only it on our dashboard. Definitely, we do have a lot of other components as well. If you want to see alerts coming from EDR or NDR or any of the security solutions, we can definitely show that on the dashboard as well. But again, at the bottom here, we do have the MITRE mapping. So any of the anomalies or alerts which is generated on the platform will be mapped to the MITRE framework, to the tactics and techniques, and a visualization is provided so that you can see where do you stand with respect to the MITRE coverage in your organization as well. So with that, let me go back to the top here. And our focus here is on the alerts now for the time being. And these widgets which you see here as risky identities and assets, we will come back to that later during the demo. So for me as an analyst, if I have to look at these alerts, I can click on these and go to individual alerts and triage that and validate that as well, which is definitely possible. But having said that, if an analyst have to look at these alerts individually, and we are talking about 189 alerts in 24 hours window, that is definitely a time-consuming aspect for a SOC analyst. But in Gurucul platform, even at the alert level, we do provide a risk score for each of these alerts. So if at all an analyst want to triage those alerts, you can actually look at the higher risk score alerts to be triaged first, because that will be the most important ones in your organization. Even then, obviously, it is time-consuming when you look at individual alerts. And this I'm talking about 24 hours window. If I look at a bigger window, I'm talking about starting the beginning of last month, it is about 11,000 alerts. So can you imagine the amount of time an analyst would be spending to triage and investigate those alerts? And if at all I have to investigate this, and if I go to the investigate of this particular alert, just by seeing the event which is generating this alert is not sufficient enough for me to actually validate this. For me to validate this, in this particular alert, the host name which is in question is this one here. So probably as an analyst, I want to look at what are the other related alerts or other events. Am I seeing additional events coming from different log sources for this particular host? And all of these information have to be gathered by querying and searching for things. So that is where which will eventually affect the mean time to respond. The more time I take to get to the context, the more time I take to respond as well. So at Gurucul, what we do, or how do we help accelerating the investigation, is that from all of these alerts which we are seeing, we would actually convert that into risk prioritized cases which can be focused upon. So if I look at the same time range which I used for the alert, which was 11,000 alerts, if I take the same time range for cases, I'm talking about 13 risk prioritized cases, which are the most important things in your organization, which need to be acted upon immediately. Now, when I look at cases, these cases could be a combination of multiple alerts. So it's not that one case is one alert. There are cases which have only one single alert, because if that alert, risk of that alert is actually, if it is risky enough to create a case, a single alert by itself can become a case. But for things like the first case here, which is case number 179, it is a combination of 3 different alerts. And each of these alerts by itself have its own risk score. Now, the risk score of each of the alert also is calculated by the platform based on various different parameters. That is, the attributes this particular alert is triggered upon, number of attributes or type of event. These are all contributing aspect for the risk score itself. But the case, if you look at it, the case have an aggregate risk score of all of these individual anomalies, and the case is created. Now, when I go and investigate this particular case, I'm not looking at individual alert or individual events. The investigate page now will automatically populate the query to pull out all the related events associated with that case, which is coming out from 3 different log sources, which is DLP here, there's an application and email security put together, and for the SOC analyst to look at each of those events in depth as well. And the respective attributes which contributed to those respective anomalies are also highlighted here so that you can see them quickly as well. So for a SOC analyst to start from a case, from all the related alerts which are part of the case, and the respective events associated with that are all coming in front of their eyes in one click of a button, instead of going and searching for individual things. Now from here, once it is validated, there's a username or an employee ID which is associated with that particular case. And if I want to take a response action on this, so there's a DLP alert, there are things happening on the application, there are things which are coming out from email, and now I see that I may probably want to disable this user or block that email. I can simply right click and say execute a playbook. This is a stored capability in our platform, wherein I can execute the playbook right from the page itself, so that that user can be disabled on the Active Directory. Now, so that is basically how we simplify this whole process. Now let's go back to the case page again. And if you look at that particular case which we looked at, it's not just about the anomalies which has been clubbed together as context here. You can see that there's an entity and the username associated with that is also populated on the case. That means I don't have to go and look for which is a user associated with that, because those information is also included within the particular case. And from there, I can actually see the profile of that user to get all the additional attributes from Active Directory for that user. So I'm getting all the context which I need to investigate that particular case is readily available in front of me. Another aspect is, when I look at this particular case, the user which is involved here, I can directly go to the profile of that user and see what else happened on that user from a historical perspective as well. So this was the case which was created, case number 179, but I can also see on the profile of the user, there was another case before, one day before, which is case number 178. And prior to that, there was another anomaly which was triggered, which did not have a case, but there is an anomaly. So I'm getting that context also outside of the case, what else happened on the user or for that user. So this particular anomaly had a risk score of 60, which was not high enough to create a case. But when I look at the user, I do get that context as well. So that is how the case management, when I prioritize those and give that prioritized cases, not just giving the alerts and anomalies associated with that, but additional context along with that particular case so that you can quickly investigate and respond to that. Now, the case management, this platform by itself, it can act as a full-fledged incident management platform. I can respond to this case. I can assign this case to somebody else. I can close this case and provide my comment and attach my evidences on that. So all of these can be consolidated in one place so that anybody else tomorrow want to look at this case, I can see the history of that and what has been done within that investigation and the conclusion of that particular case itself. Another aspect is the case can be assigned to a specific user or a specific role. So in the organization, you may have a policy saying that any case which is above the risk score of 85 should be automatically assigned to my level 2 SOC analyst. I don't want this to get assigned to level 1 because these are prioritized, highly prioritized cases. If something is below 80, let it get assigned to level 1 analyst, and then they can reassign to L2 if needed. So all of these things are also possible within the case management system. Right. So what we have looked at here is from the prioritized cases, risk aggregated, you can get into the context of it. You can go to the profile of the user from there and get all the visibility and take a response action by click of a button using the SOAR functionality within the platform. So the key aspect here is from 11,000 alerts to 13 cases, and each case is stitching together multiple anomalies and attributing that to a specific entity or a user which is impacted because of those alerts. So that is how we simplify the case management on our platform. Now, if you look at it, this is one workflow, right? We are not saying that other alerts which are not part of case is not important. But these prioritized cases are the ones which you should be focusing on first so that we are responding to the right things or the most important things in the organization at first, and then you can look at the low priority or low risk score alerts and you can triage them later as well. Now let's go back to the dashboard again. So we have looked at alerts to cases, from the cases coming to the profile and things like that. But another way of looking at that is you can actually see that user, Aurora Clark, which was part of the case, is identified as a risky user on the dashboard itself. So you can go from the dashboard to the user's profile and then get into the details as well. So there's a second workflow which you can look at as well if you want to look at from a dashboard perspective. So now if I look at this user, I'm directly getting into the profile of the user. Now let's look at the profile in a bit more detail. So on the profile, I can see that the risk score is 93. There are 7 different anomalies which are there against this particular user, and there are 2 different cases. So these 2 different cases are the ones which are part of the case management system itself. It's available in the cases there, but you can actually click on here and then go directly to the cases from here as well. And this user is being put into 2 different watch lists, which is data exfiltration watch list and high risk user watch list. And those are because there are respective anomalies which are triggered against this user, because of which the user has been put into the watch list. Now, the profile actually gives a timeline view of the risk for this user. The risk was 0 at some point of time, and it started increasing because of the anomaly which was detected, and then further to 87, and then to 93. And this risk is based on these anomalies which are detected at various different time frame within the platform. And when I go further down, this is the view which we saw from the profile, which came from the case management when we looked at the previous workflow from cases to the profile. Here we are looking at from profile to the cases. Now, even in this profile page, you can actually get details of each of these individual anomalies within this page itself without even going into the investigate tab. So if I click on this particular anomaly, I actually get the details here saying that this is data exfiltration behavior, that is email sent to self-email. So I have the details associated with that. Who is the recipient? It is AU Clark. So it's very similar to the first name and last name of the user. So that's how it has been triggered as self-email. So we have that details available there. The DLP policy violation. So I can see what is the policy, what are the file names which are associated with that, the action which has been taken, it's blocked. So I have those details. So each of these anomalies which are triggered here, within the profile page itself, you have all the details available for you to validate that particular anomaly itself without even going into the investigate page. I can definitely click on investigate here, which will take us back to the same page which we have seen when we click on investigate on the case itself. So it's the same page which it will take you, but you can definitely do that. And I can directly respond to the case from this page itself. So if I respond and say close this case, I'm actually closing case number 179, and all the anomalies related to that case will get closed, and you're responding to the case from this profile page itself. And I can go back to the history of each of those, same like what we did from coming from cases to the profile. Here, what we are doing is from the profile, I'm looking at it and then closing the case directly from here. So if I look at the cases here, if I click on that, I'm seeing these are the two different cases against that particular user, one with 87 risk score, the other one with 95 risk score. So with these two workflows, what we are talking about here is how we look at accelerating the investigation for a SOC analyst. So from thousands of alerts, bringing down to tens of cases, which are prioritized and all the context stitched together in the alert, in the cases, and the respective profiles also populated associated with that, which will help you to quickly respond to the most important threats within your organization. I hope this quick demo would have given you an insight into how Gurucul approaches risk aggregation, risk prioritization, and contextualization of alerts into cases and profiles so that you get a 360-degree view and you can respond faster. Thank you.